There are shows that were born with a hidden clarity. They don't just entertain us with monsters. They make us feel what is wrong behind the veil of reality. We enter their world and perceive what no character says out loud. The disguised discomfort, the hidden pride, the contempt that lives within the smiles. And without realizing it, we begin to see our own falsehoods, our own illusions, our own fears. You start to see what others pretend to ignore, the danger of seeing and being who you truly are. And it is precisely there that the isolation of the lucid is born. While many follow along, sleeping with their eyes open, you awaken and perceive the theater, the masks, the repetitions. You try to go back to sleep, but it's too late. Consciousness, once ignited, cannot be extinguished. And that is what we were going to talk about today. About the danger of seeing what others do not see. About the silence of those who perceive too much. And about how perhaps the burden of lucidity is also the first step toward freedom. Stranger Things was never just a show about monsters. At its core, it is a living, breathing metaphor for what happens when we dare to touch the deep, invisible, and repressed layers of the human psyche. Every creature, every portal, every shadow is a code of symbolic language speaking both psychology and parapsychology. When you combine these worlds, they reveal the true frontier between reality and the terrifying power of imagination. The price of seeing what others don't see. There is something curious in perceiving too much. At first, it seems like a gift, almost a blessing. You notice what others ignore, the subtle change in a tone of voice, the look that shifts away, the smile that doesn't convince. While the majority rushes across the surface, you see the subtext hidden in every gesture. But over time, this sensitivity ceases to be a simple advantage and becomes a weight. The upside down is not just another dimension. It is the perfect representation of the dark unconscious, the territory we all carry within us, yet desperately try to avoid. It is cold, silent, and decaying, filled with echoes of what once was. Carl Jung called this realm the shadow. Everything we hide from ourselves, everything we deny, everything society has taught us to repress. It is the repository of our deepest fears, our untamed impulses, and our unhealed wounds. The show gives this internal landscape a physical form, a place you can literally enter. But the truth is, we visit it every night in our dreams, and every day in our anxieties. The upside down is not a place you travel to. It is a place that has been inside you all along, waiting for a crack to bleed through into your reality. The Demogorgon is not an external predator. It is fear given form. It is trauma with a body. It is pain made flesh. It is the raw, instinctual terror that hunts us in the dark corners of our mind. And the faster you run from it, the closer it gets, because it is powered by your own avoidance. That is why Will, 11, and Max aren't simply fighting creatures from another world. In a profound psychological sense, they are fighting themselves. Will stares into the void of existential emptiness and loneliness. Max battles the crushing, suffocating weight of guilt. 11 confronts the horror of her own origin and the destructive potential of her own power. Their struggle is not against a monster. It is a desperate war against the parts of themselves they cannot bear to face. The terror of the show works so brilliantly because the monsters are mirrors. What we see out there, in the shadowed streets of Hawkins, only holds power because it lives first within us. The Demogorgon is only terrifying because we all have a primal fear we refuse to look at. The true horror is not the creature, but the recognition of its source, the dark, untamed wilderness of the human soul. The show forces us to ask, what is my dear? What trauma, what fear am I running from? But Stranger Things goes beyond traditional psychology. It crosses into territories that mainstream science has feared and dismissed for decades. Telekinesis, remote viewing, psychic fields. It explores the terrifying and liberating possibility that consciousness is not confined to the brain, but can extend beyond the body, influencing the physical world in ways we are only beginning to understand. It takes the whispers of parapsychology and gives them a roaring voice. 11 is the literal symbol of the expanded Minda consciousness, broken free from the emotional, cultural, and sensory prisons that confine the rest of us. Her power only reaches its zenith when she escapes the relentless noise of the world. Sensory deprivation, total focus, absolute surrender. This isn't just a fictional plot device. These are the real, documented principles behind the classified parapsychological experiments. Of our recent history, the Ganzfeld experiments, the work at 3, and the infamous Stargate Project. The military didn't just want soldiers. They wanted to weaponize perception itself. The show simply gives these cold, declassified documents a human face and a heartbreaking story. When 11 enters the void, that infinite silent, black water, the message is undeniable. When the mind is truly silent, it reaches territories that the rational world calls impossible. The darkness is not merely an aesthetic choice. It is a depiction of an internal portal. It is the gateway to the subconscious, a door most people refuse to open, because entering it means confronting exactly what they are trying to forget. The void is the space between thoughts, the silence where true perception is born. It is terrifying, not because it is empty, but because in its emptiness, there is nowhere left to hide from yourself. And then, as the story deepens, we meet Vecna. He is perhaps the most psychologically accurate entity in the entire saga, a chillingly precise metaphor for a force that haunts the modern world. Vecna doesn't hunt bodies, he hunts wounds. He feeds on trauma. He devours painful memories. He is the personification of clinical depression and unresolved grief. Silent, constant, always lurking in the back of your head, waiting for a moment of weakness. He knows your deepest weakness. He knows your most profound shame. He doesn't need to break down your dory. Enters through the existing cracks of your guilt and self. That is why Max is his perfect target. She tries to hide her pain, to bury her grief under a tough exterior. But that unexpressed pain acts as a beacon to him. Vecna only wins when a person believes they deserve to suffer, when they surrender to the voice that whispers they are broken beyond repair. Defeating him is not a physical brawl. It is a war for the soul, a desperate fight to reclaim one's own worth in the face of overwhelming despair. Then, there is the mind flayer. This is not the individual unconscious, like the Demogorgon or Vecna. This is the collective unconscious made manifest. It is a living mental field, a psychic organism that links every possessed, infected body into a single, terrifying will. It is the ultimate hive mind, erasing individuality and replacing it with a singular, malevolent purpose. In parapsychology, this concept is known as a morphic field. In social psychology, it is the mob mentality. It is the invisible force that shapes mass behavior, collective hysteria, and moral panic. The entire town of Hawkins, with its fears and suspicions, becomes a mere antenna for this dark frequency, amplifying its power. And all of this unfolds through the eyes of teenagers. This is no accident. Adolescence is the natural portal between the known and the unknown. It is the moment in life when the unconscious screams the loudest, when the inner world becomes just as violent, chaotic, and powerful as the outer world. It is the threshold where we must confront the monsters within in order to discover who we are meant to become. Their journey is our journey. The truth is simple, and it is epic. Stranger Things is telling us what deep psychology and ancient wisdom traditions have always known. The battle is not against monsters from another dimension. The battle is against what we hide inside ourselves. When the mind becomes clear, when silence opens up space for self-awareness, and when courage exceeds fear, the portal begins to close. The monsters lose their grip. We are not helpless victims of the Upside Down. We are its creators. When we face our shadow, when we begin the difficult work of reintegrating our trauma, and when we accept both our light and our darkness, the entire dynamic shifts. The monster loses its power. Vecna fades into the background noise. The mind flayer dissolves its hold. What once seemed terrifyingly supernatural reveals itself as a forgotten, disowned part of our own being, crying out for recognition and healing. In the end, Stranger Things isn't about monsters. It is about the human mind expanding to its limits and confronting the totality of itself. It is about the profound, world-altering journey of learning that the real terror is not out there in the shadows. It is within, and so is the real power.